Hello, my name is Paula
Hello, my name is Paula Brooks.
I'm here to
I'm the
tell you the
botanist on
Botany
the
Resource
Magone
Story
Project.
from the
I will
Magone
be here
Project
today
area.
to talk to you about
I will
the
be
Botany
talking about
Resource
rare
Story.
and non-native invasive
This story
plants,
includes
special
rare and
forest
non-native
products
invasive
or non-timber
plants,
forest
special
products,
forest
and culturally
products,
significant
and
plants.
culturally significant plants. The main focus of my work is to look for rare plants in project areas and to work with the interdisciplinary team to ensure these plants are protected during project implementations. Rare plants includes vascular plants. This is what we normally think of as a plant. These are plants with specialized tissue to move water and nutrients. Rare plants also include non-vascular plants. These are plants that don't have these special vascular tissues. Water is moved only by osmosis through the tissues. This includes mosses and liverworts. We also have one lichen on our rare plant list, and a lichen is defined as an entity that has an algae and a fungus that live together as one organism. And lastly, we have one fungus on our rare plant list. Fungus are what we would commonly think of as mushrooms. So in the Forest Service, we have an obligation to work with the Endangered Species Act and work on federally listed, threatened, endangered, or proposed species. There are no federally listed plant species on the Malheur National Forest. We do have Whitebark Pine as a candidate species. This is defined as plants and animals that have been studied, and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service has concluded that they should be proposed for addition to the federal endangered and threatened species list. This generally means these plants should be on the list, but because of funding and other priorities, they are not listed yet. Whitebark pine does occur on the Malheur National Forest in high elevation dry sites. There are no high elevation dry sites in the Magone Project area, and therefore there is no habitat or whitebark pine in the Magone planting area. Therefore, we do not have to consult with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service for listed proposed or candidate plants. The Forest Service also designates species as sensitive. These are species for which there is a concern of population viability over time. This list is updated periodically based on the most recent science and input from the field offices such as us. We propose to add or delete species as more information becomes known. And the ultimate goal of having a sensitive species program is to prevent these species from becoming endangered or threatened on the federal endangered species list. Most of the rare plants that we have occur in special habitats or unusual soil types. This would be seeps, springs, bogs, cliffs, or areas that are just a small microsite within a broader matrix of general forest. And this is why we use project design criteria focused on habitats to protect any plants that may be occurring in these special habitats. So for our botany program, we do surveys of these project areas. And since they're such large areas of landscape scale restoration that we're working on, we cannot look at every single square foot. So what we do is search for high probability habitats for rare plants. We inventory along the roads for invasive non-native species. We focus on areas where we know activities will be proposed, especially high impact activities such as road building or stream restoration. And then we also revisit and assess any known populations of rare or invasive plants to see their current status. And as we go out and do our surveys, we try to identify every single species of plants we find in case there are unusual things we weren't even thinking to look for. So in the Magone Project area, I'll narrow it down here. We have 88 sensitive species potentially on the Malheur National Forest. Of these, 22 species have been documented to occur on the Malheur National Forest. There is only one sensitive species documented in the Magone Project area. However, there are several other sensitive plant species that could be present. The rare plant that is known in the Magone planting area is the Bollinger spikerush. This is a tiny perennial grass-like plant that is found in gentle drainages and meadows. in areas that are wet early in the spring but then dry out later in the summer. There were several populations of this Bolander spikerush found in the Magone area, in the southeastern portion of the project area, around the Four Corners area and south. Project design features will identify these populations as areas to protect. This will help us to keep equipment and slash piles off the plants and prevent negative impacts to the populations. There are several other rare plants that could potentially be in the area. One of these is the least Phacelia. It grows also in areas that are wet in the spring but that dry out later in the year. These plants are very, very small. They don't always come up every year. So these are very hard to search for. It's very labor intensive to actually try and find these plants. There is one documented site just to the southeast of the Magone Project area, near the Four Corners area. Other rare plants that could potentially be in the project area are the moonworts or possibly adder's tongue. These are all primitive plants that have spores for their reproductive portions. They grow in and around wet meadows and riparian zones. They are very small. They don't necessarily come up every year. It depends on the weather. And so these again are very difficult species to survey for. It would be very labor intensive to actually try and search every little wet spring, seep, or meadow. So the strategy we take with these kind of species is to try and protect their habitats. And in this case, it would be to maintain the wetland hydrology and minimize ground disturbance to wet areas. So even if these plants are present but not documented, they can still be maintained in the project area. Moving on now to the opposite of rare plants, we have non-native invasive plants in the project area. Invasive plants are distinguished from other non-native plants by their ability to spread into native ecosystems and their ability to displace native plants. Invasive plants can increase the potential for soil erosion, reduce water quality, and degrade wildlife and other plant habitat. On the Malheur National Forest, back in the 1990s, there was a lawsuit that the forest lost that prohibits the use of herbicides or biological control agents on the forest. So since that time, prevention has been the main strategy to deal with noxious weeds. We also have project design criteria which will help reduce the chance of introduction and spread of these weeds. Currently, manual and mechanical methods are the only two options we have to treat noxious weeds, and that is done on a limited basis throughout the forest currently. Last summer, the forest published a draft environmental impact statement for treatment of non-native invasive plants. This EIS has 4 potential methods of control outlined: manual, mechanical, biological, and use of herbicides. Some combination of these or some of these techniques will be chosen when the final record of decision is published sometime in the winter of 2014 to 2015. In the Magone planting area, there are approximately 105 acres of mapped weeds. Most of these sites are along the roads, most notably along the East Fork Beach Creek Road. County Road 32 is heavily infested with spotted knapweed. This road was treated this summer with weed whackers to take down the heads so at least the plants won't form new seeds this year. You can see in the table the total number of sites and acres of the various weed species in the planting area. Another non-native invasive plant is in the planting area also. This is called North Africa grass. The scientific name is Ventonata dubia. This is a highly invasive annual grass. Some people claim it's even more invasive than cheatgrass. It is found on open grasslands and on rocky ridges. It can outcompete perennial grasses and shrubs, including the blue bunch wheatgrass, bitterbrush, and stiff sagebrush. It is not currently on our noxious weed list, and we probably won't actively treat these infestations. However, we will need to take this into account when planning our activities in the project area and we most importantly will probably want to monitor the response to any prescribed burning that may occur. Now, another whole category of plants of interest is non-timber special forest products and culturally significant plant species. The Forest Service Manual outlines an objective for special forest products. That is, to sell other forest products where it would serve local needs and meet land management objectives. Culturally significant plants are defined as plants which native people traditionally and still use for food, medicine, shelter, or ceremonial purposes. Firewood and posts and poles are the most utilized non-timber forest product on the Malheur National Forest. Mushrooms are the next most utilized commercial non-timber product on the Malheur National Forest. They are an important recreational resource as well as a commercial resource. Morels are stimulated by fire and other disturbance such as skid trails. Timber harvesting and burning, as proposed in the Magone Project area, will provide a short-term increase in harvest opportunities. Huckleberries are another important plant in the Magone planting area. They are gathered for both personal use and commercially. Fruiting is enhanced by fire and opening up of the forest canopy. Huckleberries are quite abundant in the Magone Lake area. Other culturally significant plants include arrowleaf balsam root, which grows in rocky open areas, and yampa, which grows in moist meadows and riparian zones. These plants are gathered by Native Americans for food and ceremonial purposes. Many members of the general public also collect these plants. Specific sites are not mapped or tracked by the Malheur National Forest. Every habitat type supports some type of culturally significant species. This again points to the importance of maintaining processes and diversity across the landscape. In summary, I would just like to remind you that there is much more to the Magone ecosystem than just timber or forage. There are many small plants that act as part of the life web in the area. If we can maintain healthy plant communities and allow natural processes to continue, this should help ensure the sustainability of all species over time. Thank you.